Hey there, welcome back to Diesel Creek. My name's Matt, and behind me, my 1999 Mack CL700. I bought this tractor about a year and a half ago at the Ritchie Brothers sale for $12,000, and I've actually used it quite a bit more than I even imagined I would already. It's been a great truck. I think I really hit a home run with this guy. It's been awesome. I've hauled D8s and cranes and all kind of stuff. Today we're pulling it into the shop to tackle a few things that I've kind of known have been an issue for a while and have kind of been putting off. And well, one funny thing about preventative maintenance, if you don't schedule time for it, eventually it will schedule it for you. We're not quite to that point, but we're like really close. One of the first things I need to fix on this truck, you can probably hear, I got a pretty good air leak coming from that tank right there. So the astute observers among you might realize I've been driving around with the hood up. Why am I doing that? Well, that's because it is hanging on by a thread. When I bought this truck, you had to like kind of work to get the hood closed right, and I knew there was some issues up here, but they've made themselves abundantly worse in the couple hundred miles I've put on this truck. I don't know how well you guys can tell there. This is the bracket that bolts into the hood here, and it's supposed to come down here and wrap around the bottom of this fiberglass hood. And it's completely rotted away, so it's no longer attached to anything on this side. In fact, the only thing keeping it up in the air right now is that it's setting on the bumper. This side over here is the thread by which we are holding on. Actually, strike that. We're not even holding on here at all either. The only thing keeping this hood attached to the truck at this very moment is the fact that it's setting on the bumper, and of course you have your cables up here that just stop it from tilting forward. If those weren't there right now, the hood would just fall onto the floor. So when I bought this truck, I knew that that was kind of crunchy and nasty looking down there, but I didn't really realize how bad it was until we started driving it. It kind of got to the point where you needed two people to open the hood. You could not physically do it by yourself because you had to kind of act as the hinge for the hood, otherwise you'd just never get it. So the last time I had a helper here, we flipped the hood up, and it's been up ever since because I knew I'd wanted to pull it into the shop here, and again, can't do it by myself. So we got to figure out today how to unbolt that thing, or I guess there's nothing left to unbolt, unhook the cables, and how to gently set it down by myself. Hopefully from there I can get it on the ground. We'll assess the situation a little bit better, and I'm going to try my hand at a little bit of fiberglass repair, which I've never done. Can't be that hard if boat people can figure it out. We're sitting pretty decent inside the cab, I think. I do want to vacuum up the floor. The stinking mice got in here and started eating away at my passenger seat. I've since put some mouse repellent in here, so hopefully that keeps them at bay. But I want to clean that up, that way I can monitor for any more rodent activities. I'm going to do my best to keep them out of this truck because it was in pretty nice shape. Last time I was under the hood here looking around, I think I remember finding a leak somewhere, so we'll go over the entire truck, give it a good thorough inspection. That's all the maintenance stuff I want to take care of that I can think of, but I want to bolt on a little bit of horsepower, I hope. A while back, our friends over at Area Diesel Service reached out to me and said, "Hey Matt, heard you complain that the Mack doesn't really have it where it counts, and we got some modules here that'll just plug right into that thing and should make it a little more peppy." So I'm going to have to open this thing up and figure it out. I don't know anything about it, but it's supposed to be pretty much plug and play, and we're supposed to get some more power out of it. So the old Bulldog is pretty torquey, but not a whole lot of get up and go. So hopefully this guy here helps us out. All right, so actually first thing we're going to do is I'm going to pull off this curb feeler light here. I've been getting tons of comments since I bought this truck. It's only had one curb feeler on the passenger side here, which usually is actually the only one you need. But the one on the driver's side I have, but it's broken. It came with the truck, but I can't get the pieces parts for it, so I'd have to buy a complete new set, and I don't really like them that much anyway. So I'm just going to go ahead and take this one off because it's kind of in our way for getting to this hood easier. All right, simple as that. She gone. All right, so the first thing we need to do to get our hood disconnected here is figure out where our wiring harness connects and disconnect it. Yeah, looks like right down here, just got a couple plugs, and this wiring here, I think, yeah, this used to run to the other curb feeler. So we can just yank that out of here. Now we do have a separate run here I think we need to keep, and I hope there's a plug for it somewhere, or not. If not, we'll make one. But it runs up here to my strobe lights that are mounted in the grill there. I don't see a connector, but I do see a questionable looking connection here. So maybe I'll just cut that connection out, and when we put it back together, we'll put an actual plug there. Yeah. We're just gonna cut this here, and we will fix it later. There's one other wire running up there, and I have no idea what the heck it is. Maybe that's something to do with the strobe effect. I've never wired up anything that strobes before, but I wouldn't really think so either, so I don't know. Our wires are disconnected. I just need to take off this loom holder here, which looks like it's about ready to break off anyway. The bolt wasn't tight. If I can get that to come off of there or snap off there, I'll accept either or. We should be free from our wires. Oh, those tricky suckers used metric. Yep, snapped it. Perfect. Now I haven't decided which way I would actually like this thing to come apart. I could take out 2 bolts, there's one on each side like that right there, that are actually the hinge pins, or 4 bolts that bolt the hinge to this rotted out bracket. Neither one of them look like a treat to get to, because you have all this other nonsense in the way, and you can't go from the top because you can't reach from the top down, and you can't go from the bottom because there's just no way to get there from here. So you kind of have to work through this little hole. So I'm not sure I'm going to be able to set you guys up to see. But before we get to knocking the bolts out of this thing, we need to find a way to hold the hood up, because last thing we need to do is loosen the bolts that just let the hood fall to the ground. I'm nearly certain that an overhead crane would make this easier somehow. Well, the plan is here to obviously set this thing down on the pallet, and the problem is that our pallet is level right now, and as you can see, the hood is it's not really square to the pallet. So we need to find some stuff to kind of take all the weight off of the hood before we can let those cables go up top. So I'm gonna find some foam blocks or something to stick underneath there, try to be as gentle on this thing as possible. I got the weight of the hood because it started to close a little bit, so we have most of the weight there on the pallet. The next thing I want to do is I want to run a ratchet strap down from the top of the hood to the back of the fork carriage there, and that'll kind of hinge it away from the truck a little bit, or keep it from rolling that way as we unhook it. Well, I hope this works. Well, I don't want to speak too soon, but I'm feeling pretty good about it so far. We are free! At the last minute here, I decided to put this box in here to keep the hood from smashing against the fork carriage, and that box came in clutch. That was the secret that I was missing. I'm glad I thought of that. All right, well that worked out awesome. I could not be happier with how that went. I'm sure it's going to be a bear to reinstall, but you know, we're not there yet, so don't worry about it. These foam cushions I happen to have laying around here work perfectly. Not that this hood is in great shape or the paint's in nice shape or anything, but you know, it's proof of concept, I guess. But man, this thing, it's bad. It's real bad. This side is completely free. That's not supposed to be like that. This side over here is literally hanging on by that right there. Can you see it? We're gonna break it off right now because there's that little bit holding on there. Maybe the wires have become structural at this point. Probably shouldn't just go yanking on it, but it's, I promise you, barely hanging on by anything. While I'm here looking at it too, this fastener just reminds me of one of the ones that people always ask, why don't you spray it down with some WD-40 or some PB Blaster or Croil or whatever, I assure you, there is not a penetrant in the world that's going to help you get those fasteners off of there. Nothing. It doesn't matter. It's past the point of no return. So that's why I don't bother with them. And in our case, I don't really rightly know what's up inside of here yet. I got to figure all that out, but it's not looking good. But we're going to have to do some serious fiberglass fabrication here. Yeah, no bueno. All right. Wiring harness is completely free from this cross member. Now we can just snap it off of there because, well, it's the easiest thing to do. There you go. I don't think it's supposed to look like that. Or that. Like I said, I'm hoping to repair this thing, but quickly seeing that's not going to be so easy. Firstly, because I don't know anything about fiberglass repair, as I've mentioned. But secondly, because this is like a laminated thing. You've got like a piece of angle iron almost, like there's a piece of bent steel that originally ran all the way to this corner. Yeah, it's supposed to look like more like that. You know, you can see it's blistered and blown out down here. This one here might be salvageable. There's a slim chance that I might be able to save this. I mean, but the steel is definitely compromised underneath of it, so I guess even if we were able to get that bolt out, you're not really winning anything. The two upper bolt holes look salvageable, and the metal behind them looks, you know, usable. But when you compare that again over to here, man, there's just a lot missing, and I really don't know how to go about fixing this. I'm gonna have to do some research. Well, the first thing I'm gonna do is go ahead and slice open this fiberglass on this side here so I can get this original metal piece out. And then from there, we're gonna go about figuring how we can recreate that piece. And of course, we're gonna have to mirror image for the other side too. And then basically make like a gloved hand. So you're gonna have this angle iron that's embedded in the hood, and then you're gonna need to make another piece that'll attach to the outside of that through the fiberglass. And that is what will get welded onto this metal bracket after we cut the old junk off and clean it up. There's definitely some work to do here. I can taste that. That's probably not good. Probably recommendable to be wearing a mask when you're cutting fiberglass. Yeah. Oh no. So, this isn't even going to be as easy as I thought it was going to be, and I didn't think it was going to be very easy. This piece of metal doesn't just stop here. It's actually connected to like a stamped piece that goes all the way up the inside of the hood here. So, it doesn't look like I can just pull it out very easily. I got to figure out where it's still connected yet, and if I can remove the whole thing, that'd be good. If not, I don't know where I have to cut it out and weld it in place, I guess. Attach a new piece to it. All right, not the end of the world. There's two rivets here that hold this piece in there right now, and that one's already busted, so I just got to drill out that rivet, and this whole thing should just slide right out, I think. Oh yeah. What are we held up on? All right, I don't think I'm gonna be able to get this thing out of here, unfortunately. I think I'm gonna end up cutting this old junk, rusted crap off of here, make the new piece, and we'll have to butt weld it up against this. Alright, I sprayed some blue layout dye on there. Once that dries, it makes it really easy to scribe a nice line. And then once I have my line scribed, we're going to go through this thing in the brake. Alright, we're on our way now. We got our first bracket bent up here, and it looks decent. I'm definitely new to the whole press brake game, so I don't know what I did wrong. Maybe it's just my crappy Harbor Freight press brake die there, but it seems like the radius is a little bit looser at this end and a little tighter at this end. Again, I don't rightly know how you can do that, but it shouldn't affect our causes any. I don't know if you guys can see that line there. I just scribed that so that we can buck that off, and now we'll have a web to go across this thing, because we need to have a bolt hole right there once this is all said and done. So I was doing some thinking about how I said you had a tighter radius at one side than the other, and that's got to be because we're just using a cheap, little brake in the press here. It's not like a true press brake where you have a piston or an acting force on each side of your die. We just have one in the center, so you have to have your material pretty well centered in there, otherwise your radius is going to get off like that. At least that's the reason I came up with. That looks pretty good to me. Let's bender. Yeah, we're still coming down faster on the left side than the right side. I don't understand what the deal is with that. Well, it's a little past 90 degrees, but we can bend that back. Just use the vise. But the radius looks pretty even this time, so I'll call that a win. Not the most precise or scientific way to go about it, but it works. Oh yeah, calibrated, 90. Definitely a better result than the first one. There we go. Our brackets are welded up. I'm gonna throw these in the blast cabinet now because everybody I've talked to about doing this has said that we need to make sure these surfaces are nice and rough so that the fiberglass has something good to adhere to. Go. Yeah, this side looks like way better. In fact, I don't know that we needed to make that whole big bracket. Of course, these nuts are definitely not salvageable. There's no way I'm going to get those out. So I guess we need to cut it off anyways and weld something new on there that has new threaded holes. Yeah, this side's definitely in much, much better condition. It's basically just this bottom folded over piece that's rotted. So if it wasn't for these nuts up here being non-salvageable, I would say that we would just leave this alone and fix just this little tab here, because that would be pretty easy to do. But actually the metal's thinned. You can see there's a good rust line all the way up from here. So it's compromised at least this far back. So, you know, what the heck, we'll just cut it off and do it right. The last little bit down at the bottom is about impossible to cut. There we go. All right, well, I've already done a little bit of layout here. X marks the spot where we need to drill our holes. I didn't touch on it, but I figure most of you took it for granted. I'm using junk metal I had laying around to build these things. So these holes were already pre-existing. None of them line up or matter. It actually might be kind of helpful to our cause that the fiberglass will kind of get into these holes and bite onto this piece better once we do the fiberglass recoat. All right, little center punch action, and then I'm going to drill these holes oversize for what we need, because we're going to end up welding nuts on the back side. By drilling the holes a little bit bigger, we're just going to make things easier to align. I have one of those threaded insert tools where you just kind of like pop rivet a set of threads into there basically, but I'm concerned they're not going to be as strong as welding nuts on the back side. There are some blind holes on that insert piece that we couldn't remove from the hood. I think we're going to end up using some of those riv nuts on. Beauty. Well, we're ready to weld the nuts onto our new brackets, but these are zinc-coated nuts, as most that you get are. So you want to grind that off of there or wire wheel it off of there. And a good, easy way to do that is to thread them onto a longer bolt that you can actually manipulate and not get your fingers taken off in the wire wheel. You just got to make sure that you're only turning it in the direction that it's not going to spin the nuts off and send them into low Earth orbit around the shop. Hard to tell on camera, but I believe we have taken most of the coating off of there, which will be good enough to weld. To weld our nuts on there, I've already got one nut on the back side of this bolt. And put it through, put a nut on the other side, and that'll hold them both in place while we tack them. All right, those aren't going to go anywhere. Now we should be able to just back the bolt right out of there and use it for the next set of nuts. One problem you can have sometimes when you're welding nuts on like that is that they kind of shrink a little bit because of all the heat. So if you need to, just run a tap back through them a couple times and that'll kind of chase the threads out, and usually everything's smooth sailing after that. These brackets aren't perfect by any stretch, but I'm trying to get them as even as possible because what it's going to translate to is how the hood actually sits on the truck. So if one bracket ends up being off, the hood's going to lean. So I'm trying to keep them as straight as I can. Alright, with all the nuts welded on now, we should be able to weld these brackets onto the ones in the hood. Alright, if you notice on this piece here, I threw a little backing plate in along the joint, and that's primarily because poor fitment here. Really hard to try to make a nice cut in this goofy position on the hood, so I didn't get that exactly square. So that's A, but B is that it actually kind of helps us get a better penetrative weld here. It'll kind of help our cause for getting that root all the way into the backing plate there and making sure we have full penetration of our weld. Trying to get this thing lined up exactly and get it tacked is gonna be the worst part here. I think I got it close. Out of my calibrated eyeball, it looks pretty decent. Good enough for who it's for. Yeah, I'm actually real impressed with that. Pretty darn good. We can fully weld it in now. We just got to watch our heat doesn't get too hot when we set the hood on fire or anything. Fiberglass fire doesn't sound fun. Does fiberglass burn? I don't know. Yep, I'm feeling pretty happy about this. She's a beaut, Clark. Once it's covered with fiberglass, you'll never even see it. Yeah, looks like we're lined up pretty good. Let's buzz it in. I like it. What do you guys think? Looks pretty good. Tell you what, guys, I am really happy with how this turned out. Both sides look pretty darn good. Now that the hood's well on its way to being repaired, we need to start thinking about how we can fix this bracket. I did get a hold of Mack and tried to buy said bracket, and unfortunately, They don't carry it anymore. I realize that the truck is getting kind of old. It's a 1999, but to me, it's not that old when you consider this is a 1980. I still don't even think that's very old. To me, an old truck's like 60s or 70s. But in their defense, I guess it is over 25 years old, so we are going to have to make something ourselves. Basically, we need to bend up another couple brackets, just like we made for the hood, that are going to overlay those brackets in the hood and weld onto the ends here. So the first thing I want to do is just cut all this old nasty junk off of here and get it cleaned up and ready for receiving new pieces. Well, I just noticed that my lens on the camera here has taken a little bit of abuse since we got started, so hopefully you guys still have a nice clear picture, but I definitely need to get another one. Anyways, I got these brackets buffed up, deburred, and I did a little bit of layout. I got our bolt holes marked out here. They're center punched, so we just got to drill those. Once those are drilled, we would be ready to go ahead and mount it on our bracket, wherever I set it. Oh, right here. So, you know, these are going to go in here something like so, and we could go ahead and tack those in place, except the thickness of the fiberglass that we do the actual repair on the hood there, the thickness of that fiberglass when it's done and built up is what's going to determine how these actually locate on this bracket. So we're done with that for the moment. We need to shift our attention to actually getting the fiberglass down and letting that harden. Once that fiberglass is cured, we're going to be able to set this all in place loosely on the hood, get it tacked up, and then finish weld it. And then we're going to have to paint this piece as well. So we're going to have to apply our fiberglass, recoat all these areas and everything, get this all fixed up. One of the things I noticed too is when this hood was built in pieces, it's not like it was all cast as one piece of fiberglass. So you have like your main outer shell, and then you have this inlay piece that runs all the way around here, and that's what encapsulates these brackets. So these brackets would have originally been already pre-stamped, painted up and everything, and they just laid them in there, put this fiberglass thing over top of it and glued it in there. You can see the glue pushing out around the edges here. The issue is that the glue is now failing all the way up around here and everything. The glue is gone. You can see the remnants of the glue down in here. When I cut this piece out of here, this piece of the fiberglass actually just lifted right up out of the way because it was no longer attached to anything, which is no bueno. we're going to have to do a bit more than just cover these things over like I had originally planned. We're going to have to work some of that fiberglass resin down inside of there and hope for some good adhesion. The last thing I want to do before we can apply the fiberglass, though, is reattach these brackets up here in these two holes. I have self-tappers just holding them in there currently. I did that so I could kind of manipulate the insert there when I welded these on. But now that they're stationary and welded in place, I want to drill out that hole big enough to put one of those rivet nuts in there, so like a threaded nut insert into this bracket, and then we're going to use some bolts with some Loctite on it to hopefully hold those in place. Well, change of plans. I could not get the rivet nut tool to work because basically the thickness of the fiberglass is screwing me. If I were to open this up real big where I could get the entire front of the rivet nut tool down in there, it would work, but doesn't. So I just drilled and tapped these for 5/16. So now we're just putting in these little short stubby button head 5/16, and I'm gonna Loctite them up so that they don't bag out. Alright, I don't have a ton of thread engagement there, so I'm not going to crank on those too much. I don't think they're doing a whole lot. I mean, they were just little teeny rivets before, so these are obviously much, much stronger. Alright, before we get started applying fiberglass, we need to prep the area, I guess. So, we got the die grinder with the sanding disc on here, and I'm just going to basically rough up all the area that I plan on applying a resin and fiberglass to. I think this is as much for cleaning as it is for proper adhesion. You need something like roughened surface for the stuff to kind of bite into. Mixing instructions are kind of hard to adhere to. I'm going to do my best here. The mixing instructions were 1/4 of a tube to 1/4 of a can. Well, what's the 1/4 of a can that I can't see through? What's the 1/4 of a tube that's in the shape of a triangle? Just guessing here. I'm hoping that it's going to get hard no matter what, and the amount of hardener just determines how quickly, but I don't know that. Let's keep in mind right now that I don't know what I'm doing. I am just out here winging it. All right, it's been a couple hours here. I wouldn't say it's 100% cured, but it's pretty darn hard. So we can go ahead and at least get this thing ready to tack up our other pieces on the hood bracket. I didn't talk about it, but what I did before I put the fiberglass on was I installed some button head cap screws into our bolt holes on the bracket, that way that we didn't fill them full of fiberglass. Luckily, they dried clear enough that I can see the heads on them, and what I'm going to do, my plan anyway, is to take a hole saw, and I can put the centering point on the hole saw right into the the socket of the button head cap screw, and the hole saw is the same OD as the head of said cap screw, so should all work out pretty good. I can cut the fiberglass in a nice round circle and then be able to extract the bolt, is my theory anyway. Let's see how it works in practice. I can already see the fly in the ointment here. My centering bit is going to come in contact with the bolt before the hole saw actually contacts the new fiberglass. But we're going to just keep plowing forward and see what happens. Yeah, we're already... I'm just going to try pulling the center drill out and see what I can do. Take two here. I think it's working. Look at that. That worked out perfect. Man, every once in a while, blind squirrel gets a nut still. Perfect. All right, these bolts on the end here are a little bit harder to see, but I'm gonna do my best. There we go. That worked out really good. I'm impressed with myself there. Sweet. Definitely one thing that could be better here on my fiber job is that it's kind of lumpy bumpy. This one here I put 3 layers or so on. The other side I only did 2 on. It's a little smoother. But I'm just gonna take a sanding disc and kind of knock off the high spots a little bit. It's not gonna be perfect, but it'll be a lot closer. Well, before I went ahead and drilled these new brackets, I just verified my layouts were still the same. Out of 6 total holes to align, only one of them changed, and that's due to the thickness of the fiberglass on the other side there. So it was only off by a little bit. We're going to drill these holes a bit oversized anyway, so we can make sure we're all lined up. But all in all, I'm really happy with how this is turning out. All right, so I'm just throwing bolts in these things to get them, you know, snugged up to the seated position here. Pretty proud of myself on this deal. All the bolt holes are lining up. Well, we've actually managed to screw this up in a way I didn't think about. The distance between our ears now has shrunk. I'm just going to have to trim a little bit off of this angle iron. It's not really a big deal. Well, our hood is officially done. I went and sprayed some epoxy primer on that fiberglass while I did the hood bracket, just so we could seal up the fiberglass. Old ChatGPT told me that fiberglass like that is a little bit porous and can absorb moisture, and that can lead to other issues with the fiberglass, so I figured that was a good way we could seal it up and hopefully prolong this repair. Now that the hood's done though, we can shift our attention back to the truck. I want to start by changing this clutch cable. Now it's not broken, it works, but it is super stiff to push the clutch. And it's very hard to ease the clutch out. And when you're pulling out on a grade or something with a big heavy load behind you, if you kind of like engage the clutch roughly, that's a great way to delete a drive shaft or a U-joint or blow a rear end out or something. So we want to make sure we have nice, smooth, easy clutch engagement. I'm pretty sure the clutch cable is going to be the way to do that. So I got to get under here and figure out just exactly how the clutch connects in here. We need to shed a little light on that situation. All right, this doesn't look too bad. There's just a yoke up there, and the cable threads right into the back of it with a jam nut. So if I figure out what jam nut size that is, should be able to pop that loose. Maybe we have to take the yoke off. Maybe that would make our lives easier, I'm not sure. On the other side of the firewall, we have this flange here, and if I unbolt that, it looks like, well, I can't tell for sure, but it looks like either that flange is threaded or there's just jam nuts that keep it kind of in place there. We're gonna have to kind of pay attention to that, if there's some sort of adjustment there. All right, yeah, I'm gonna pull that yoke out, and I think the whole thing will come right through the firewall here. I won. There we go. This ain't gonna be too bad. All right, well, we're done with the cab side of things. We'll go down under the truck to the transmission and see what we got to do to unhook down there. Of course, that pin is nice and stuck in there. Man, this sucker is seized. Ugh. I'm just rounding the head of that pin off of there. I'm gonna have to get the actual torch. There we go. Man, that took some heat. I had that yoke completely cherry to get this pin to free up like this. There she is. So the cable's out. It still moves fairly smoothly, but what happens, you see this cable itself kind of looks like a cable you might tie up your dog to if you don't have them trained real good or something. But I think that coating eventually breaks down inside of there because this cable, when installed, makes a big, loop. So in the area that plastic coating slides all the time, I think it probably breaks down and under pressure gets a little bit jumpy and sticky. Not much to changing this out. We're just going to replace these yoke ends and then stab it back through the firewall and connect it back on the transmission. Pretty simple job. That's nice compared to that hood. All right, I just got it connected up here in the cab, and I can press it with my hand pretty easy, but I haven't climbed up here in the seat yet. I don't think I could have pressed it with my hand before like that. Oh yeah. Yeah, that is much, much smoother. Money well spent on a clutch cable there. This cable was so stiff and grabby before, there were several times when I was pulling out loaded that I really thought, oh man, don't blow a drive shaft here. Don't break anything. Because all of a sudden that clutch would pop and it would just engage and bite and you're just, ugh, I don't like it. All right, so our friends over at Area Diesel Service sent us over this Ag Solutions. This is like a module that you plug into the truck here, and it's supposed to, what they claim, up to 90 horsepower gain and save 3 miles per gallon. Well, I don't know. We're gonna plug it in and give it a try. I don't know exactly how these ones work. So, well, it's a slightly more complicated thing than I was thinking. Ooh, we got a little twisty knob here to mount in the cab, it looks like. We're going to keep that on 11, I think. I think I better read some directions here. Alright, so after reading the directions, I determined we need to pop this cover off of here. These are all your individual unit injectors for each cylinder. You got 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And there are 2 leads coming into each injector here on the top. There's 2 wires. So what they want you to do is start the engine, and with it running, use your multimeter to check the polarity, basically the way the voltage is coming in. One side's going to be positive, one side's going to be negative. They're not looking at a voltage reading or anything. You just need to establish which side's plus and minus. So I'm going to go through and do that, and then once those are all identified, then we can install this wiring harness that came with the kit. Alright, so we tested all of those connections here, and you can see I put some red paint on the positive side of each one. They were all the same, except for number 1 was flipped around. But now I'm routing this new wiring harness from the control module up underneath this heat shield where the factory wiring is at. Well, I tried to do it nice. The wires are not long enough to route it that way, unfortunately. There's 2 different legs of the harness that we're connecting to these injectors. One of them is like 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the other one has the rest of the terminals on it, I guess. And then a couple of the injectors will get 2 terminals hooked to it. This is why my mind can't wrap around wiring, because there's just no rhyme or reason, it seems like, to the way the computers process stuff. At least no logical one that I see, but if you're in that world, you probably disagree. But we're connecting these wires to the negative side of these injectors. Oh. Should have went around the backside of the breather pipe. Well, I've read these directions about 15 times so that my dyslexic ADHD brain will comprehend them. But I'm beginning to think that the directions just could be written a little bit better. But I think we got it. I'm also not 100% clear on why they built the harness in the shape that they did. It's kind of like they expect you to run the wires from the center here, which doesn't make any sense to me. So the 2 different legs coming off of this harness are for 2 different sets of injectors. The first piece of harness is for injectors 1, 2, 3. The second piece of harness is for injectors 4, 5, 6. For injectors 1, 2, and 3, they laid it out with the wires running from front to back, and for some reason the other leg is laid out in reverse of that, going 6, 5, 4. I don't quite understand why. If that makes any sense to you. I'm pretty excited about this though. I hope it works. Throw some zip ties on this mess now, try to tidy up this wiring, and then the last thing that we need to connect is our positive and negative for power to our module, and we're going to be set. Well, I got the wiring all squared away and tidied up. I mounted our module up there behind this air boot you can see on the firewall there, connected to the 12-volt power on that solenoid, and the ground over in the little bank over here. Looks like a common ground for a lot of stuff. And we should be good to go ahead and try to fire this thing up and see if we can hear an audible difference. Now, I didn't bother to hook up our little selectable switch here for in the cab because, well, I can't see any reason why you wouldn't want it on 11 all the time. Even in the highest performance mode that this thing is going to offer, I don't think it's going to be setting the world on fire or burning the barn down. So I think we're just going to give her a go for right now. It says in the directions that if you don't connect this little selectable knob, that it just automatically defaults to 11, which is it's what we want.
What we do is if we need that extra push over the cliff, you know what we do?
Put it up to 11.
11, exactly.
Yeah, I'm just going to fire it up and see if we can hear any difference. Well, just sitting there giving her the beans in one spot in the shop here, can't exactly tell any difference. So let's get this hood thrown back on here and see if we can't take this thing down the road for a spin and see what it feels like. Bracket turned out pretty darn nice, if I do say so myself. Pretty proud of this one. Let's hope it fits in there now. I was kind of joking about the whole fitting in there thing, but now I'm not. I tacked it in there and then we welded it out, and I thought I did pretty good with the heat not making anything distorted, but apparently I did just enough. All right, we got her. Yeah, it's one of those things that once it's in here, it's not bad, but just getting it in there, it's kind of wedged. All right, let's get this thing hung on the truck. Alrighty, she is bolted on. is the nicest that hood is closed since I've owned this truck. Hot diggity! The old Bulldog's back in business. Last thing I want to do before we take this thing out for a drive is get this thing off of here, whatever this is. I think it's an automatic air purge to get moisture out of the tank. But that's what's leaking, so we'll remove it from the tank here. It's just a couple wires and then it threads out. And then I'm betting there's a diaphragm or an O-ring or something in there that's damaged. I didn't even notice. We pretty much just ruined this thing trying to take that apart. Those bolts probably never been out of there. A little iron and aluminum oxidation and an impact that didn't care. It cracked, each bolt cracked out its housing here. So this one that I haven't been able to get to yet probably ain't gonna matter much. Yeah, that one broke off. I'm betting we're just gonna have to buy a new one of these. Oh yeah. Loaded up with oxidation. No bueno. The diaphragm itself doesn't look bad, but the housing is now destroyed. I found a Bendix part number here, so I'll jump on the Google machine and get one of these dialed up. But for now, we can just plug this tank and that's problem solved. All right, so that thing we pulled off and ended up destroying there is an automatic tank drain. And it does connect to the wiring harness here, which means that it's the more expensive model. And I'm not saying we won't replace it, but we have manual tank drains on here anyway, which I'm pretty good about using. So I'm not going to worry about that right now. We're just going to stick a plug in here and we're going to dial up a new one of those things, and we'll just have to put a new one in whenever it comes in the mail. All right, let's send it. Well, let's go see what she can do. Clutch is so much smoother. No way you could feather it out that easy before. Much nicer engagement now. We'll get up on the big road here and see if she feels like she's got any noticeable improvements performance-wise. Granted, I haven't run this thing bobtailed in a while. Feels pretty peppy. still wouldn't describe it as a rocket ship by any stretch, but man, it's definitely a lot more peppy with a lot more get up and go than it had before. I can't get over how nice the clutch pedal is. Should have done that repair a long time ago. As I look out over the hood here, the hood isn't just shaking around like it's about to fall off. Small improvement there as well. She got a lot more pep in her step now, guys. You couldn't smear this smile off my face. Well, I'm almost afraid to look, but we're gonna open up the hood here and see how she survived her maiden voyage. The bumpy roads around here do not help her out any, that's for darn sure. Well, you can open it one-handed again still. That's nice. It's been a process to open this hood for quite a while. Oh yeah, looking good down there. Hinges bolted up nice. One thing I thought about doing, and I'm gonna keep an eye on them for a while, is these bolts that go in here to the hood. They have lock washers on them. I'm not a big lock washer guy. I kind of don't know how well they really do or don't work. But I was thinking about putting some Loctite on those bolts, and well, I might still do that. But it looks like she survived her first outing just fine, so that's pretty exciting. The module that we installed on here for extra power definitely seems to be modulating. It's doing something. We won't know the true story, of course, until we hook this thing to a wagon and start yanking on something, but if that little test ride was any indication, it sure seems like she's got a lot more pep in her step. With that repair completed on the Mac, we have lots of stuff to go pick up. Believe it or not, I did some buying. Go figure. So if you want to see the Bulldog in action, be sure to stay tuned because I think the next video or the following video, we're going to be doing just that. So if you like this one though, do me a big favor, hit that thumbs up button down below. Really helps out the channel. Doesn't cost you guys a dime. If you would like to help support the channel in a little more direct fashion, you can head on over to dieselcreek.com, pick yourself up some sweet swag we got over at the store. We've got hats, t-shirts, beer koozies, sticker packs, all that and more over at the store. We got some new hats available, as well as some really cool new shirts, and of course, it is hoodie season. We got some good heavyweight hoodies available over there at the store as well. Don't forget, I know we're still a little ways away, but holiday season is approaching, so if you guys are wanting to pick up anything from the store, well, the sooner you could order it, the better. That way, we don't have to worry about the holiday rush and dealing with shipping and all that stuff. So if you guys are wanting Santa to leave you something under the tree, be sure you head on over to the store at dieselcreek.com and pick yourself up something before the holiday rush. So with that being said, that's all I got for today. So until the next time, I want to thank you guys for watching, as always, and I'll catch you on the next one. Later.